Have you ever been to the Highland Village Museum? Do you know where it is? If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. And if you enjoy this video, then give it a thumbs up, share it, and watch the next one. In the meantime, let me ask you a question. How Scottish is Canada? Here in Iona, in a beautiful lochside setting with mountain views, it's little surprise that you'll find the Highland Village Museum. What might be more unexpected is that this Highland Village Museum isn't in Iona, Scotland, but an ocean away in Iona, Cape Breton. It's probably quite a good place to ask the question, how Scottish is Canada? The museum's a living creation of Highland life in times gone by here in Cape Breton. Of course, there are information signs in Gaelic, the language that folks living here would have spoken, the language still used on some of the road signs here to this day, and the language spoken in one of the primary schools here in Cape Breton. When I taught in the high school in Islay, away back home, the Gaelic teacher teaching Hebridean kids to speak Gaelic was a chap called Jason, who was from Maine in the US. Now, if you haven't seen his channel here on YouTube, then take a look. But he learned this Gaelic here in Cape Breton. There's a Gaelic college. Now, Scottish links aren't limited to Cape Breton. Nova Scotia isn't even the part of Canada with the largest number of Scottish descendants. I could list the numbers of mountains, rivers and towns with Scottish names from here all the way to Victoria. I could tell you Scottish regiments key to the creation of Canada. I could talk of Scotsmen who mapped and explored it, the countless Arcadians who were the backbone of the Hudson's Bay Company, the Scots Nor'westers who were their competitors, the Scotsmen who towered over the company that resulted from their merger, the story of how one of those Scotsmen rose from obscurity in forests to hammering in the ceremonial spike in the Trans-Canada Railway line, the other Scotsman who designed that line. Should I talk of the Glasgow-born man who led the nation to Confederation and became first Prime Minister? Or the Dunkeld man who was the second Prime Minister? Or any one of the 14 out of 24 Prime Ministers who claimed Scottish descent? Maybe you'd rather I tell you about Alexander Graham Bell, our famous telephone inventor, whose museum, just down the lake here, celebrates his life in this beautiful place. Or J.J.R. MacLeod, who led Canada's greatest medical achievement, the pipe bands, the burn suppers, the curling. Now, I'm not saying there's no English or French, even German, Italian and Ukrainian identities. I'm just saying that in Canada, the formal diagnosis for cardiac illness is, I can't believe it's not Scottish. But can I trust you? Do you mind if we go a little bit deeper? I did a wee performance of my Scotland Made the World show here in Cape Breton last night. Now, if you didn't already know that I'll be touring the show Scotland Made the World across Canada, where have you been? I've been banging on about it for ages. Now, you can get dates and tickets at www.brucefummey.co.uk. Get on there. Anyway, I met folks at the show called McCaskill. Of course I did. There's a McCaskill Museum close to where I did the show. Any of you that have been to Dunvegan in the Isle of Skye will have seen the museum to the giant McCaskill. Well, there's also a giant McCaskill Museum here in Cape Breton because he emigrated here and many of that family still live in the area. Now, I often see debates, sometimes heated, between North Americans who call themselves Scots and Scots who say that they are Scots in a diaspora or something different, like the blue touch paper. As I say, I met some McCaskills last night and it got me thinking, did the giant McCaskill become less Scottish when he landed in Cape Breton? Was that because he'd crossed an ocean? How Scottish are his descendants several generations later? If they're not Scottish, then when did that change? 1 generation? 2 generations? Was it when the Glasgow-born Prime Minister John Macdonald led Canada to Confederation in 1867? What is Scottishness anyway? Or maybe the question is, when is it? If you watch this channel, then you know that my videographer Matt's from the south of the border. I mean English. I often have disagreements with the English twat. What I mean is, we have sophisticated intellectual discussions about what being Scottish means and how his presence in Perthshire tarnishes decent, upstanding Scotsmen with the stench of cricket. Why were the language and culture of my childhood the gold standard of Scottishness, you'd ask? If I, as a lowlander, learn Gaelic, is that patriotic or cultural appropriation? Are descendants of immigrants more Scottish than the Scots? Can descendants of immigrants really call themselves Scots anyway? I suppose what I'm trying to say is, you didn't get my jokes at the gig last night. Well, they certainly didn't get the joke about the difference between chip shops in Edinburgh and Glasgow adding salt and vinegar or salt and sauce. You'll have heard the joke. Does that lack of cultural understanding mean Cape Bretoners are no longer Scottish? Or is their loss of Scottishness better demonstrated by the fact that none of the fish and chip shops here sell pakora? The giant McCaskill left the Highlands before Aladdin's or Dindon's 3-in-1 takeaway arrived in Scotland. But then again, he also left before there was a fish and chip shop in Glasgow or Edinburgh. What I'm asking is, when was Scottish? Now, that wee informal extra local gig that I did last night was in the community hall of a quintessentially Cape Breton Gaelic village called Englishtown. Don't tell Matt, it'll just open a whole can of worms. One of the lassies who helped organise the show was a regular viewer of the channel called Kirsten, who moved to Cape Breton from Ontario. Her dad arrived in Ontario from Wishaw in 1957. And when she told me that, I said, please tell me you moved to Hamilton in Ontario. Not just because I'm doing a show there on June the 30th, but I loved the idea that for some folk, going home from Wishaw to Hamilton involved a 7-hour flight and a change of time zones. If you didn't know, time zones were invented by a Canadian who was Scottish. Or was he? When he was born in Kirkcaldy, he hadn't invented time zones and Einstein hadn't invented relativity. He belonged to the land that time forgot. Or as we call it, Fife. Anyway, Kirsten's dad and his pal came to Canada on holiday in 1957, ran out of money and never got back. You can just see them going up to folks in the street in Hamilton, Ontario saying, could you spare the price of a plane ticket so I can get back to Wishaw? That joke works better if you understood the geography of Lanarkshire. Or if you'd actually moved to Hamilton, you actually settled in Toronto. It's detail. The point is, Kirsten grew up in 20th century Ontario, the daughter of a plasterer from Wishaw. The giant McCaskill was a fisherman from Uist. They're very different environments. They came from a different time. They spoke different languages. The difference between them is probably bigger than the difference between Scots and Canadians today. As a thought.
Hey, I'm Matt. I'm Bruce's English videographer. Now, one of those intellectual debates that Bruce says we have is about whether or not he can manage to film without me. Now, I think he can't. He insists that he can. And that is the reason why I am stuck here in rainy Perthshire while he gallivants all over Canada. But it's also the reason that you guys are about to watch some very blurry footage. Enjoy.
Here in Cape Breton, You have rural Highland beauty, lochs and mountains. The Cabot Trail here, the North Coast 500 back home. South Ontario is more like the industrial central belt, highly populated and English speaking. Now the whole English v Scots debate is something for another time. And time matters. Scots migration to Cape Breton was earlier. Now, I know there was lots of migration in between the Hector arriving in Pictou and 20th century plasterer who watched a promotional film about Canada at the pictures. There were loyalist troops coming north after the American Revolution, Selkirk settlements in Prince Edward Island and Manitoba, Hudson Bay traders and trappers, Métis, Scots, Indigenous folks and more. An 18th century Highlander is different in culture and language to an 18th century Lowlander. An 18th century Lowlander has a different culture than a 21st century Lowlander. And in the 21st century, most people who live in the Highlands moved up from Kent. What I'm saying is that the last time I toured here, it struck me that here in Cape Breton, it feels a bit like there's an older residual Highland culture, whereas Ontario feels like a more recent residual Lowland culture. Now, just like in modern day Scotland, there's mixing, with Highland dress being worn at Burns suppers celebrating the Lowland Scots language, pipe bands at a border festival. So I'm going to give you my premise. But just before I do, let me say that I want to hear from you. I've banged on about the fact that I'm travelling across Canada performing my live show Scotland Made the World. I'll be driving coast to coast as I tour the show, and I'll be interested to meet and hear from as many Scottish-born Scots and folks of Scots descent as we go. Tell me your opinions and stories. Will my premise have changed by the time I get to Victoria and Vancouver Island? How Scottish will Canada seem? Here's a list of the places that I'm doing shows as across Canada. Now, I'd love you to come along to a show, and I'll be hanging around selling merch after the shows so you can come and have a chat. I'm also going to spend a couple of nights on Prince Edward Island. Tickets for my show are at www.brucefummey.co.uk. If you can't see me in person, then send me a wee message to inform my view of how Scottish Canada is. Now, here's my premise. There are different types of Scottishness in Scotland and different types of Scottishness in Canada, and at different times. Here in Cape Breton, there's still a few native Gaelic speakers. You hear them here at the Highland Village. It's an older type of Scottishness. A bit like I'm told there's an older type of French in Quebec, and no doubt the French town across the hills in Cape Breton that I visited called Cheticamp. Different types of Scots have come here at different times and made their mark, but they've also mixed with others. Across Nova Scotia, Halifax was an English naval base, and Tigonish, more Scottish. There are still Mi'kmaq and French and more recent arrivals. I found a Ghanaian restaurant in Halifax. How cool is that? Prince Edward Island, Manitoba, Alberta and British Columbia all have pockets of old and more recent Scottish influence. They see Glengarry, Ontario has the biggest Highland Games. Calgary, Alberta has the biggest Burns Supper. Prince Edward Island has the most descendants of Scots as a percentage. So have they drifted to a more Canadian, less Scottishness? Or is it Scotland that's drifted? Whilst folks here stayed the same. Scotland and the world has changed since their ancestors left. 21st century Canada has Indians, like actual Indians, like Indian Indians. They've got curry houses. Obviously, not like proper curry houses like we have in Scotland. Scotland and Canada are more diverse now than they were in the 19th century. Of course, none of the Scots who emigrated in Hector looked like me. Scottishness is like a Venn diagram with lots of little subsets. Lots of Scottish seeds have been planted here in Canada over the years. When you walk through a garden, you might notice the beauty of an individual flower, but sometimes You step back and see the garden as a whole. As you pass through, you might get the scent of roses, the smell of lavender. You see the flash of colour from clematis or rhododendron. But I can definitely smell haggis somewhere. Last time I was here, I made a number of videos about Scots in Canada, and I've put them in a playlist that's coming up on screen now. If you enjoyed this video, then hype it, share it, and watch the next one. Come and see one of my shows as I wind my way across Canada. In the meantime, ha mé an dóchas go bí lá mála. Séirí an drasta.